Bonjour, Yasmin. Bonjour, Archana ji.
Bonjour, Angada. Bonjour, everybody else.
Yeah. So we start. So Yasmin, you don't have the text, no?
Yes, she has the text.
I have the text, only Life Divine I don't have.
Yeah, she has the text.
Okay. Then read the para. Such
is the principle of the yogic trance, samadhi. Into its complex phenomena, we need not now enter. It is sufficient to note its double utility in the integral yoga. It is true that up to a point, difficult to define or delimit, almost all that samadhi can give can be acquired without resource to samadhi. But still, there are certain heights of spiritual and psychic experience of which the direct or as opposed to a reflecting experience can only be acquired deeply and in its fullness by means of the yogic trance. And even for that which can be otherwise acquired, it offers a ready means, a facility which becomes more helpful, if not indispensable. The higher and more difficult of access becomes the planes on which the heightened spiritual experience is sought. Once attained there, it has to be brought as much as possible into the waking consciousness. For in a yoga which embraces all life completely and without reserve, the full use of samadhi comes only when its gains can be made the normal possession and experience for an integral waking of the embodied soul in the human being.
This is the last para of the chapter. So, and what he's saying is interesting. We'll have a look at it. Okay. So he's saying, such is the principle of the yogic trance. So he has told you that the yogic trance normally you enter into the intraconscious, and the amount of knowledge that you get there is far, far superior to the knowledge that you have in the outer nature of body, mind, life. Okay. So this is the principle. And into its complex phenomena, we need not now enter, okay? Because there are all sorts of, I just mentioned, there is samprajnata samadhi, then there is asamprajnata samadhi, okay? What it means is that when you are concentrating on something, okay, you are concentrating only on one thing, okay? Suppose you are thinking of mother, okay, and you enter into a silent consciousness, and you are not aware of the physical world, but you come to know everything about what mother needs to tell you. But there is an asamprajnata samadhi. That means the mind is not fixed on any object. It is objectless. It becomes absolutely the vastest. So I'm just giving you one example of how many details can be there in the samadhi. Okay. So simply saying, we won't go too much into that because the integral yoga does not concern itself so much with the samadhi as we understand it normally, which is losing consciousness of the physical world. Why? Because Shivda exactly wants you to be fully conscious of the physical world. He wants you to be there and work and transform the waking consciousness. That's why he's not so interested in the non-waking samadhi. Okay? So that's why he's saying, for our purpose, it's enough. Now he's saying, it is sufficient to know its double utility in the integral yoga. And he's going to explain to us what is the double utility. Okay? It is true that up to this point, difficult to define or delimit, almost all that samadhi can give, almost all, can be acquired without recourse to samadhi. In other words, even in a waking condition, your consciousness can be in the higher levels of consciousness. And if it is in the higher levels of consciousness, it is certainly possible for it to access the intra-conscious, the subliminal being. Okay? So, subliminal being is inferior to the supraconscious, okay? Or superconscious, sometimes he uses the word. Vertically up, and horizontally inside yourself. So that's what he's saying. That's why he's not so interested in the details of the samadhi. But still he's saying there are certain heights of spiritual and psychic experience of which the direct as opposed to a reflecting experience. Now this is interesting because he's talking about reflective experience. If you remember that if you are in the lower planes of consciousness in the spiritual field, okay, here you are in the higher mind, okay, yet you can experience the conditions of consciousness in the higher planes of consciousness. So that's only a reflection. You get bits and pieces. You don't get the whole experience. So instead of saying direct, that means your consciousness has gone into the, let's say, overmind. Okay. Now your consciousness is in the overmind and it is directly experiencing everything that the overmind can tell you. But if you are in the higher mind, which is 3 degrees less, 4 degrees less actually, in the higher mind, you can get a reflection of the overmind in the lower higher mind. Okay? So that's what he's meaning. So, but still he's pointing out that there are some at the highest levels where you cannot go with your waking consciousness. Your waking consciousness has to be suppressed, or not suppressed perhaps, but kept pending. That's more likely. It's kept pending, and then your consciousness rises to the highest levels of consciousness. And then you are brought down in time into the normal consciousness by maybe your own effort or maybe your own, the time limit that is allowed to you there, because you can't remain there eternally. You have a body-mind life and it pulls you down. You remember in mother's case, I told you to read the supramental boat experience. There, she was pulled down into the physical consciousness by the ringing of the clock. It struck 3 o'clock and the sound brought her down. Okay. So, this was saying. He himself also says in one letter to Motilal Roy of Chandranagar, he says that I was in Param Brahman consciousness for several hours. So, but several hours only. After that, you have to come down. This was the problem. Coming down sometimes has to be forced on you. That I remind you also about Ramakrishna, what he used to do to force himself down. Because as soon as someone used to talk about God or sing kirtans, okay, his consciousness used to shoot up and he used to go into a trance. But he was told that you can't be in a trance all the time. So he used to leave a small desire below. I told you this before also. And desires are impurities. Desires are that which pulls you down. So he would put a very mild desire, like I'm a jal khabo. That means I want to drink water. It doesn't harm you too much, but it pulls you down enough. Okay. So you need something to pull you down. But Srimad is saying that you can remain in the higher consciousness as well as in the waking consciousness, which you call the waking samadhi. But that is not possible absolutely at the highest levels. Why is that so? Because when you are in your body-mind life, the body-mind life are imperfect. And then the imperfection will pull you down. So with your body consciousness, you cannot go up. Okay? But Mother says something very interesting, not with the body consciousness, but with her mental consciousness in the waking state, she had gone up to the supramental. She says that very clearly. And that's why she would remember all the experiences and she noted very carefully all the characteristics of the supramental body, the supramental methods, and the supramental way of working. Okay. So this is why Muslim is saying. But still, there are certain heights of spiritual and psychic experience of which the direct as opposed to a reflecting experience. So very clear now, na? Direct means your consciousness has gone up there. But reflecting experience means your consciousness has not gone up there. But when you look up, you can see something of the higher planes. That's a reflection. It's not a direct experience. It can only be acquired deeply and in its fullness by means of the yogic trance. So sometimes you do need to go into a yogic trance for the highest of planes. and differs from individual to individual. Each yogi, his capacity is limited. That's why Swami is saying, point difficult to define or delimit. So it depends on the individual, how developed he is. Okay. And even for that, which can be otherwise acquired, it offers a ready means, a facility, which becomes more helpful, if not indispensable. The higher and more difficult of access become the planes on which the heightened spiritual experience is sought. So samadhi definitely is helpful. It's not indispensable, but it is helpful. If you want to go to the highest, then samadhi is even saying, if not indispensable. So sometimes it is absolutely indispensable. Once attained there, it has to be brought as much as possible into the waking consciousness. So that capacity you must have, and it is not easy to do that. It takes a lot of effort to bring it down. What you experience on the terrace is not very easy to bring down into the ground floor. Okay? So that is what Swami is saying. But it has to be done. Because if you do that, then you become a Ishvara Koti and not a Jiva Koti. That means you can be at one point, you can be at several levels of consciousness at the same time, simultaneously. That's making samadhi. That's why I say it has to be brought. Once attained there, it has to be brought as much as possible into the waking consciousness. For in a yoga which embraces all life completely and without reserve, which is this yoga? Obviously, Srimada's integral yoga. Because other yogas don't embrace all life completely, and without reserve, definitely not. The full use of samadhi comes only when its gains can be made the normal position and experience for an integral waking of the embodied soul in the human being. So, ultimately, if you are in the supramental consciousness, it gives you the power to definitely change things in the physical world. So naturally, that will be the, but beyond the supermind, maybe again you need the normal, use of samadhi. So up to that point, this is what he's saying about samadhi. It has its usefulness, but it's not indispensable. In the beginning, it has to be samadhi, because it's very, very normal and natural for people to fall into a sleep when they are concentrating inwards. It's very common. There are so many letters which are being written to Sri Aurobindo, letters on yoga, where they're saying, I concentrated, but I fell asleep. So Sri Aurobindo says that's what happens normally, because when the waking consciousness is not used to the higher planes of consciousness. So when you go up, the waking consciousness sort of gives up its function, if you want, or protests maybe, and becomes non-operative. It doesn't operate anymore. So you go up, the waking consciousness is not sufficiently developed to go up, it doesn't. So this is the samadhi. Okay. Then we go to the next chapter, which is Hatha Yoga. Now Sri Aurobindo takes up first Hatha Yoga, then he also takes up Raja Yoga. If you remember, right in the beginning also, he has taken up Hatha Yoga and Raja Yoga, but only within the chapter, not with the heading, not as a chapter. But here we are in the Hatha Yoga and Jnana Yoga. We are in the, I think the section is the knowledge, not the knowledge aspect, the Jnana Yoga aspect. The love aspect you have seen already, no, it will come later on. Next, in the second book, there is the yoga of integral love. Okay, so that is bhakti. And finally, in the last section, he gives about his own, the integral perfection. So, Hatha Yoga also has got its own use, although it's a lower form, and a lot of it is concentrated on the body and the vital, not so much on the mind. So, let's start reading Hatha Yoga. So, Jasmine read the first one, then
Rangada,
yeah, tell me.
One question crosses my mind.
Yeah.
Why has he included Hatha Yoga in this Gyan Yoga portion?
Okay. Because it does give you jnana, na?
Achha, okay.
It does give
Just,
you.
just crossed my mind because Raj Yoga is understandable because it works on the mind.
Yeah.
Hatha
But even,
Yoga basically is on physical, but it also gives my, okay. Yes.
maybe we'll get a more detailed answer when we.
Detailed answer when we read it. Yes.
Yeah, we'll do that. So, Archana,
Yes, sir.
first para you.
Hatha Yoga. There are almost as many ways of arriving at samadhi as there are different paths of yoga. This gives the answer almost.
Exactly. I was just going to tell you, really first sentence answered your question.
Yes.
Yeah.
Indeed, so great is the importance attached to it, not only as a supreme means of arriving at the highest consciousness, but as the very condition and status of that highest consciousness itself, in which alone it can be completely possessed and enjoyed while we are in the body, that certain disciplines of yoga look as if they were only ways of arriving at samadhi. All yoga is in its nature an attempt and an arriving at unity with the Supreme, unity with the being of the Supreme, unity with the consciousness of the Supreme, unity with the bliss of the Supreme. Or, if we repudiate the idea of absolute unity, at least at some kind of union, even if it be only for the soul to live in one status and periphery of being with the divine, Salokya, or in a sort of indivisible proximity, Samipya. This can only be gained by rising to a higher level and intensity of consciousness than our ordinary mentality possesses. Samadhi, as we have seen, offers itself as the natural status of such a higher level and greater intensity. It assumes naturally a great importance in the yoga of knowledge because there it is the very principle of its method and its object to raise the mental consciousness into a clarity and concentrated power by which it can become entirely aware of, lost in, identified with true being. But there are two great disciplines in which it becomes of an even greater importance. To these two systems, to Raja Yoga and Hatha Yoga, we may as well now turn. For in spite of the wide difference of their methods from that of the path of knowledge, they have the same principle as the final justification. At the same time, it will not be necessary for us to do more than regard the spirit of their gradations in passing. For in a synthetic and integral yoga, they take a secondary importance. Their aims have indeed to be included, but their methods can either altogether be dispensed with or used only for a preliminary or else a casual assistance.
Okay. So, British para. Just a few things we will note here. So the language is very interesting. And I love to look at Srindu's language. It is so subtle. Okay. For instance, indivisible proximity. It's so interesting what he's saying. Okay. So we'll have a quick look. Okay. I'm reading the first sentence itself. There are almost as many ways of arriving at samadhi as there are different paths of yoga. So all the yogas, they will arrive at samadhi almost. Indeed, so great is the importance attached to it, not only as a supreme means of arriving at the highest consciousness, but as a very condition and status of that highest consciousness itself, in which alone it can be completely possessed and enjoyed while we are in the body, that certain disciplines of yoga look as if they were only ways of arriving at samadhi. The importance of samadhi in India is over exaggerated, so very same. Okay? But it is essential. Okay? In fact, it is so essential that most yogas, they try to get that. It is very essential, but at one point it becomes essential, even in the integral yoga. All yoga is in its nature an attempt and an arriving at unity with the Supreme. With the Supreme, he has kept it vague. Okay? The Supreme can be there from the higher mind onwards, right up to the supermind. 5, 6 stages. Unity with the being of the Supreme, unity with the consciousness of the Supreme, unity with the bliss of the Supreme. Why is he saying 3 different things? Because unity can be of these types. Okay? If you have unity with the being of the Supreme, okay, this is the Mayavada theory or the Buddhist theory. Being means a substance. When you experience only the Sat, then you end up with the, by the way, when you are experiencing only the Sat, the physical world becomes unreal to you. Okay? You are identifying only with the Sat, not the consciousness or the bliss. Okay? So, unity with the consciousness of the Supreme, you are in the Purusha consciousness and the world becomes Prakriti. So, you end up with the Sankhya philosophy. And unity with the bliss of the Supreme, then you end up with the Vaishnava theory of the Supreme, the world being a Leela. That's why he says separately. It's possible to experience separately, and it's also possible to experience together. And maybe 2 together or even 3 together. But that's difficult normally. Very difficult to get all the 3. Or if we repudiate, reject, okay, throw away the idea of absolute unity, there you are. The absolute unity would be all the 3 together. Okay? Some say it is not possible. But Shraddha is saying if, okay, it's possible. So, or if we repudiate the idea of absolute unity, at least there's some kind of union, some kind of union. And what are those? It's like different things. Even if it be only for the soul to live in one status and periphery of being with the divine. Periphery. Periphery is the circumference, the outer circle. Okay? Not really the center. Okay? In one status and periphery of being with it. So in other words, you can say when you are in the intraconscient, you are in the periphery. When you are in the higher mind, you are in the periphery. But you are, when you go to the illumined mind, you are going slightly more into the center. And when you go into the intuitive mind, you are even more in the center. And finally, you go into the center when you are in the supermind. Okay? Periphery of being with the divine. Salokya. Salokya means living with the divine in the same world as the divine. So it can be at lower levels of consciousness also. In a sort of indivisible proximity. Now look at that. Sort of indivisible proximity. Proximity means nearness. Okay, samipya. But it is indivisible. In other words, it's not unity. When he's saying indivisible proximity, you are very, very close to the person, in this case the divine, but you are not yet one with him. But you are always with him, samipya. This word, samipyam, nearness to the divine, is so beautifully explained by Sri Aurobindo, indivisible proximity. There is a difference between you and the divine, but it is indivisible. Fantastic, the way he has used the word. Okay, so that is the like 2 friends. Okay, they are always together, but they are not one. They are 2. So that's a samipya and salokya, both. But there is one which is sadharmya. You put on the nature of the divine. That's also there. So Srila is saying that, but he wants the absolute unity. He wants all the aspects of the divine to be experienced by the integral yogi. This can only be gained by rising to a higher level and intensity of consciousness than our ordinary mentality possesses. An ordinary mentality does not possess the spiritual planes of consciousness. It doesn't have the power to rise there. It has a power potential, but does not. Samadhi, as we have seen, offers itself as a natural status of such a higher level and greater intensity. Therefore, it's very useful. It offers you a way. And how do you do it? By concentration. And you can concentrate how? Between the eyebrows, that will take you to the vertically up, and in the solar plexus center. That will take you into the intraconscious, and you will get bhakti for the divine. Greater intensity. It assumes naturally a great importance in the yoga of knowledge, because there it's the very principle of its method and its object to raise the mental consciousness into a clarity and concentrated power by which it can become entirely aware of, lost in, identified with true being. Now, 3 words he has used. You see each one how different it is. You can become entirely aware of. So, that is the indivisible proximity. Okay? You are aware of it, but you are only seeing it from a distance. Okay? But you can get lost in it. You are in the divine, but you are not yet identified with the divine. So he has given you 3 grades. First of all, you are aware. Secondly, you are lost in it. You are completely lost in it, means the other consciousnesses are not there. You are only with the divine consciousness. But identified, that's it. Last one. You are completely one with the divine. When you are lost in, you are retaining your individuality, and the divine also is there, but they are 2 different. But you are lost in the divine. So you are individual. But identified with true being, your individuality has disappeared because it has become the divine. So see how interesting his use of words. Okay? I absolutely, the more I see Sri Aurobindo, the more it is wonderful the way he uses language, so subtle and so clear. I go to the next sentence. But there are 2 great disciplines in which it becomes of even greater importance. To these 2 systems, to Raj Yoga and Hatha Yoga, we may as well now turn, for in spite of the wide difference of their methods from that of the path of knowledge, they have this simple principle as their final justification. Yes. Sorry, same principle, not simple. Same principle. What is the same principle? Samadhi. That's common to both. At the same time, it will not be necessary for us to do more than regard the spirit of the gradations in passing. Because our intention is interior yoga and not Hatha Yoga and Raja Yoga. So we'll just have a quick glance at that. Why? Because it has given Samadhi and it gives you knowledge. For in a synthetic and integral yoga, they take a secondary importance. They not primary importance. Their aims have indeed to be included, but their methods can either altogether be dispensed with, or used only for a preliminary or a casual assistance. So, Sri Aurobindo would certainly like you to sit and meditate for some time, okay? But you can also do that with work. Okay, you can do working, but you can always have your consciousness on the divine. Okay? I remind you of the experience, the example that Ramakrishna gave. He gave the example of the servant who is working in a house. She has to clean vessels, and she has to sweep the floor. She has to do the cooking. She has to wash clothes. All these things she has to do. But her mind is on a 2-year-old child that she has left at home. Is he safe? Is he okay? In the background of her mind, always that is there. So that is the example given for a waking concentration. Sri Aurobindo uses 2 types of concentrations. Okay? There is a concentration which you lose the awareness of the physical world, and you shut your eyes and your ears, and you go into the inner consciousness. But then you are not conscious of the physical world. That is the concentrated. He calls it exclusive concentration. You exclude everything else. But there is a wider and an inclusive concentration. And that is the one that is what we discussed just now. Do work and remember the divine. In the beginning, you have to remember, offer, and start the work, and at the end, give thanks. They are also the method, not mine. Okay. So he said that. But slowly, what you are doing in the beginning and the end covers the whole working time. Okay? Even while you are operating, even while you are doing work, okay, sometimes you can keep the divine in the background of your mind. That is possible. It's very interesting, right? Some people like to do certain works which can make you think of other things. I remember some people love to just mechanically cut vegetables. Okay, but then they can think of other things. The work goes on mechanically. You can do that without concentrating too much on anything. Okay. Or you can do blessings packet work. It's mechanical. The body is doing it, but your mind can be somewhere else. So that's a wide concentration, not inclusive concentration, you can call it. That is what Sri Aurobindo prefers. And Mother was definitely preferring that. To some people, Sri Aurobindo advised that try to find half an hour at least in the day when you can sit down quietly and concentrate. But Mother used to always encourage work. She was very much in favor of the inclusive concentration. Okay, so we still have some time. We can read the next paragraph. Hatha Yoga is powerful. So Kiran, you have the text with you? You have not read this.
Yes, yes, Dada.
So read the next paragraph. Hatha Yoga is powerful.
Hatha Yoga is a powerful but difficult, onerous system whose principle of action is founded on an intimate connection between body and the soul. The body is the key, the secret both of bondage and of release, of animal weakness and of divine power, of the obscuration of the mind and soul, and of the illumination, of subjection to pain and limitation, and of self mastery, of death and of immortality. The body is not to the Hatha Yogin a mere mass of living matter, but a mystic bridge between the spiritual and the physical being. One has even seen an ingenious exegete of the Hatha Yogic discipline explain explain the Vedantic symbol Om as a figure of this mystic human body. Although, however, he speaks always of the physical body and makes that basis of his practices, he does not view it with the eye of the anatomist or physiologist, but describes and explains it in the language which always looks back to the subtle body behind the physical system. In fact, the whole aim of the Hatha Yogin may be summarized from our point of view, though he would not himself put in it that language as an attempt by fixed scientific processes to give to the soul in the physical body the power, the light, the purity, the freedom, the ascending scales of spiritual experience which would naturally be open to it if it dwelt here in the subtle and the developed causal vehicle.
Yeah, not casual, causal. Causal.
Causal, sorry. Developed causal vehicle.
Very interesting what he's saying about the Hatha Yoga. The body is not considered from the medical point of view. He's using the word, what's the word he used? He used it as the physiologist and the anatomist. So the body is for the anatomist and physiologist, it's a machine. But for the Hatha Yogin, it's not a machine. It's a causal body. It can cause you to go into higher levels of consciousness. So this is how you use it. He views it as a very sacred gateway to spiritual experience. It's a wonderful way of seeing it, but that's exactly what he's saying. So it's already 8:35, but we have 5 minutes, so we can quickly go through if you have the time. Okay? So, I think it's a very small paragraph, so we can finish it today. Hatha Yoga is a powerful but difficult and onerous system. Onerous means very cumbersome. Okay, onerous means cumbersome, very difficult. There is a lot of things that have to be done, all sorts of complications are there, whose whole principle of action is founded on an intimate connection between the body and the soul. So this intimate connection is not advised in the integral yoga because the body is to be taken care of, but not too much attention given to it. Whereas in the Hatha Yoga, a lot of attention is given to the body. Okay? The body is the key in the Hatha Yoga. The body is the key. The body, the secret both of bondage and of release. It's a body that will allow you to get rid of the consciousness getting imprisoned in the body, of animal weakness, but also of divine power, of the obscuration of the mind and soul, and also of their illumination. So the body has got negative thing, but it can take you to the higher levels of consciousness, of subjection to pain and limitation, and of self-mastery, of death and of immortality. The body is both. So in the Hatha Yoga, the body's importance is for all the positive things that it can give you. In the individual yoga, not so much importance is given to it because there is a better method and you concentrate in the mind, and then afterwards you can use the body for it also. But first you start with the mind in the individual yoga, not with the body. So the body is not to the Hatha Yogins a mere mass of living matter, but a mystic bridge between the spiritual and the physical being. So it's very holy. The body has to be seen as holy. I remember some very interesting thing in the medical field. So I'll just tell you. There used to be a nurse here. Her name was Michelle Lipsa. She was French. She used to teach us biology. And she used to help Shanalda. Shanalda was the doctor who treated Sri Aurobindo, when he was flown in from Calcutta in 1950. So she said that when he is operating, he used to pay attention to the body as though it is something very sacred, she used to say. And she said that when he used to stitch up after the operation, he would do it in such perfection that there would be no scar marks at all. He was so conscious. So my point is, because the Hatha Yoga also is thinking of the body as something holy. Okay? That's why I mentioned this. Okay? We have to also pay attention to the body and treat it as something, an instrument given to you, a necessary instrument given to you by the divine. So you must not neglect it. You must take care of it. But you have to take care of it without attachment and not too much of importance given to it. Okay? A mere mass, but a mystic bridge between the spiritual and physical being. One has even seen an ingenious exegete. Exegete is one who is a novice, okay, or one who is propounding the Hatha Yoga discipline. Explain the Vedantic symbol Om as a figure of this mystic human body. It is a little exaggerated perhaps, but even that is. Although, however, he speaks always of the physical body and makes that the basis of his practices, he does not view it with the eye of the anatomist or the physiologist, but describes and explains it in language which always looks back to the subtle body behind the physical system. All the chakras are in the subtle body, not in the physical body. In fact, the whole aim of the Hatha Yoga may be summarized from our point of view, though he would not himself put in that language, as an attempt by fixed scientific processes to give to the soul in the physical body the power, light, purity, freedom, the ascending scales of spiritual experience, which would naturally be open to it if it dwelt here means in the body, in the subtle and the developed causal vehicle. So he is saying that Hatha Yoga pays a lot of attention to the body, but the methods are very onerous, very long, and very long drawn. So that's why Shendro does not put too much attention to the body. But he does say that you have to treat it carefully. Okay, so we have read 3 paras today, not bad. I am now closing, and I wish everybody a very happy day. Let's have a good day. Au revoir, all of you.
Thank you.